Hi, I'm Circe Olson-Wessner. I'm the director of the Museum of the American Military Family, and this is our podcast, At Ease. Once again, I am pleased to interview our 2020-2024 writer-in-residence, Connie Kinsey. Hi, Connie.
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing great. We're so excited about all the things going on with the museum right now.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So Connie, you and I worked on, two big projects over the last 4 years. We spent millions of hours texting and emailing and phoning, and yet we've never met in person. And both your project, E Pluribus Unum, and then of course this home project, um, it's just incredibly difficult to coordinate. And I know you were working with Valerie in 2020, 2022 on E Pluribus Unum, and between hundreds of people being involved in the project and the data collection and the editing and all of that, these two books are really extraordinary. And so I wanted to give you kudos for being able to work long distance and, create masterpieces.
Well, I feel very privileged to be living in these times where we have the technology where we can do this. I
Yeah.
mean, could you imagine having tried to coordinate this even 20 years ago? It would have been impossible.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I remember my dad used to edit and he'd have piles of paper and
Mhm.
pencils and clip it little things everywhere. Yeah. Well, so after 4 years of writing and editing and coordinating as a writer in residence, I imagine you've learned a couple of things. What comes to mind about the experience of being this writer in residence for us?
This has been one of the most rewarding things in my life. When you first announced the opportunity and I saw the posting on Facebook, it
Mm-mm.
was like something in my heart clutched and said, I have been training all my life for this. I do nothing but talk about my military background, and
Mm.
writing is my passion. And to be the writer in residence for the Museum of the American Military Family, it was like you created this job for me. It's just been tremendous.
Well, I'll tell you, it was kind of an interesting announcement. I remember it. I said something like, must be able to write on deadline, not knowing what the parameters are. It was like this. I was telling people, don't apply, don't apply. So,
Well, I was so afraid I wasn't going to get chosen. I was just like, oh, please, God, please.
well, both you and Valerie impressed us so much. We took both of you on that first year, and it was a good thing because that E Pluribus Unum, which we'll talk about a little bit more, was an enormous undertaking. I mean,
It
when you're
was.
involving multiple anthropologists and all sorts of stuff, it's a lot. Um, so working and collaborating with all these different people on all sorts of projects also has been interesting to me. Like I got to meet you and Valerie and, our last writers in residences. We all start out as strangers and then, mostly at the end of it, we're still friends. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, well, it is nice when you can't reach through the Zoom and just
Yes, I know. It's like, wait, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about home. It's complicated. It just released July 8th, and it started out as a top new release, and it's been hovering at #2 bestseller in the military category for ever
Yes.
since it started. Um, tell our viewers a little bit about it. I mean, they can imagine what it's about by the title, but give a kind of an overview.
Well, the book is about the book as I originally conceived it was limited to just the military viewpoint. But
Mhm.
as we worked on E Pluribus Unum, I solidified my feelings about what is home.
Mhm.
And so that was percolating anyway.
Mhm.
And we took the what is home concept, what is home for you, and asked that of the universe.
Mhm.
And well, you know the response we got: 4 continents, a poet laureate, a famous journalist. I mean, it was incredible the response we got. And I think it touched a chord.
Mm,
People, especially I think post-pandemic,
mm.
people are a little more conscious of home now, I think, than perhaps they were a few years ago. What it means to be home and who is home and what is home and how do you define home. So I think we hit a nerve.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't even equate it with the pandemic, but we did spend an awful lot of time at home. So yeah, maybe so. Um, so the home book gave all sorts of perspectives of home to the point of, there was some nostalgia, there was some anger, there was some just this feeling of wistfulness in the whole book. And I found that very interesting, whether the person was civilian or military. It was kind of interesting. So for home, you wrote 9 essays
I did.
introducing each section, and in E Pluribus Unum, you wrote 9 or 10, and they're all memoir pieces. So how do you draw inspiration from your life to come up with 18 completely different essays?
I don't feel like I've even scratched the surface. You know, my dad was career, and so we were in for, years. And I spent, I was 14 when he got out of the service. So I spent some very formative years
Mm.
in that atmosphere. And I was privileged to live all over the place. I have stories from now until the end of my life to tell. And having being able to look at it through the safety and the security and the lens of the military, we were in strange surroundings, but they were also familiar surroundings.
Mhm.
And so you were able, I think, to enjoy more fully the different because you also had the same. You weren't just splashing down into a pond where you knew nothing.
That's cool. That's interesting. Um, so for your home essays, do you have a favorite one? And if so, which one and why? And was there also one that was like really difficult to write about?
I don't know that I had a favorite. I was very pleased with myself. I opened the book with my poem Where I'm From, which
Mm-hmm.
is after a George Ella Lyon poem. She's a Kentucky poet, and she wrote this poem that went viral. And
Mm-hmm.
I've written this poem in a number of workshops, and every time it's different because my concept of home was different every time. But
Mm-hmm.
now that my concept has solidified, I was able to write the definitive Where I'm From. And so I'm real pleased with that essay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pleased to include it in this book because I think it's appropriate. The hardest one, I think, was my dad's last salute,
Mm-hmm.
which we did, I think, for the leaving home section. It's when my dad left home for the last time.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was hard. It's still hard, and I have trouble reading it.
Mm-hmm. The pieces in the book are also different. Most of them are nonfiction narratives, but one is an excerpt from a novel in progress, and
Mhm.
several of them are poems. And like I said before, they range from wistful and nostalgic, super sad. Did any piece that isn't your own strike you in particular?
I think they all struck me. I was, um, I was taken by how we were all put in to similar situations and responded so differently.
Mm,
And we were all different ages when we encountered these situations. But the military is all about being uniform. But
mm,
we were all so different, and our experiences were different, and our reactions to them were so different.
mm.
And so they're all my favorite.
Good answer. Good answer. Diplomat. We always talk about writing in our books, mostly because I interview the authors. Um, but E Pluribus Unum is different because there's a lot of artwork in it. So in addition to the, dozen essays that you and Valerie each wrote, Brandon Palma, who's a designer and artist on the West Coast, created these incredibly awesome photos and drawings and collages. And so I just wanted to show some. And they were, each chapter has its own heading, but just the cover alone, it's kind of shiny. This book, everybody, this is a plug, is I think our most important work, and the home is one of the more satisfying ones. So this one is different than, very different, because it talks about gender, race, religion, identity, culture, and ethnicity in the military family. So just look inside really quick. I mean, the artwork is just incredible. And so we're very proud of the writing, but we just wanted our viewers to see the gorgeous artwork. Yeah, a little shiny there. In some ways, we did a disservice with E Pluribus because we didn't release it on Amazon because of the cover design. We wanted to have it do full color both inside and outside. So the only company we could find is Lulu.com. So if people want to buy this book, they can only get it from Lulu. And if they want the home book, it comes right from Amazon. And so far, people are really loving it. We've gotten so many comments.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. So Connie, you're 4 years into a 2-year residency.
I wouldn't believe.
So we will be saying goodbye to you at the end of 2024. You cannot stay. What are your future projects? Anything currently in the works, or?
Well, my future projects are the same future projects that I had when I started with you, because this has taken a lot of my time. But when I first started this project, I was working on my memoir, which is about being a military brat during the Vietnam era. And I'm also working on, I call it a dark comedy, but it's not that dark. About social justice issues in the 90s. And so that's where I am. I'm still trudging through those two things. I'm in the mushy middle right now. I've written the beginnings and the endings of both books, but it's the middle that a lot of writers find problems with.
See, that's just inconceivable to me. And my son does this too. He writes the beginning and the end, and then he fixes everything in the middle. How can you do that? You have to do everything.
I think it's like knitting. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to share an update with, Valerie is working on a sort of a murder mystery detective kind of thing. So maybe you should coordinate on that, your 90s book, maybe it's something. So I also wanted to say that, the home book for us, exploring the concept of home also came at an interesting time in the museum where we were and are in the process of relocating and looking for a home. And so it seems like life and this isn't fiction, but life and art are, just like this for us. And even in the, when people start reading the foreword, they'll see how the whole process evolved. It became almost a religious allegory. And so
Yes.
people have commented on that. It makes them remember very much what it was like to move. So, well, I wanted to say that we at the museum have loved having you as a writer in residence. You've done great work. And so we want to wish you everything great in your next endeavors, and definitely keep us posted, and we'll share your accomplishments. And meanwhile, I'll put the links to the 2 books in the bottom of the comments so that people can read and just click and buy. Is there any last thing you'd like to say before we sign off?
I just would like to encourage folks to read this book, because I think it is really, it's interesting on a lot of different levels. You don't need to be military to get this book. It's just about what is home. And I would also like to encourage people to read E Pluribus, because like you said, it's our most important work. And
Yeah.
it is pretty military in background. But most of all, I would like to say that if you find yourself in need of a writer in residence again, I mean, I'm here.
Or yes, yes, but we might want to give somebody else a chance. So
Oh, I know
I know all
that.
the writers out there, we're going to be having a slot at the end of the year. So if you're interested, reach out to us at, information at militaryfamilymuseum.org and we'll talk to you about it. Okay, Connie, well, we've got to go. I wanted to remind our listeners that this podcast has been brought to you by the Museum of the American Military Family and Learning Center, and the museum's podcasts are supported in part by New Mexico Arts, the New Mexico Humanities Council, Sandia Area Credit Union, and organizations like Military Brat Registry and Military Brat Seal. So I've been talking to our outgoing writer in residence, Connie Kinsey, and I'm looking forward to reading great stuff from you in the future.
Thank you. It was good to be here.